Change always announces itself in whispers, like the soft click of a screen door at dusk, or the way the lake's skin goes still when the last boat ties up for the night. I felt that hush the moment Connor waved me through the porch of his family's summer cabin, 2 hours north of Minneapolis, saying, "Make yourself at home, Jason." I'd been here once before in high school, but this weekend was different. No parents, no curfew, just a long overdue college break before finals wrapped us in fluorescent library light again. I set my duffel beside the pine-framed bunk bed that still smelled faintly of campfire smoke and lemon detergent. The air was cooler than I remembered, edged with early June sap and the promise of late sunset sand. Something in my chest twitched as if matching the breeze. Connor's older brother, Mason, was due any minute. He'd texted that he was grabbing ice and a bag of marshmallows on the way. I hadn't seen him since Christmas break, when he'd passed through our dorm floor in a hurry, taller than I remembered, his shoulders filling the doorframe and his grin making it hard to finish the sentence I'd started. I told myself this weekend was about catching up with Connor, gaming marathons, trash talk over burnt s'mores, maybe a hike along the cherry blossom trail behind the cabin. Yet while Connor babbled about new DLC packs and stocked the mini-fridge with caffeine, my thoughts drifted to Mason more than once, to the way he'd kneel by the fireplace to coax reluctant kindling, sleeves shoved up strong forearms, to the way he said my name, low, amused, like he was placing a bet, only we understood. I hated how icily my pulse sped up at memories that probably meant nothing to him. I slipped onto the lower bunk, thumb brushing the notch my pocket knife had carved in the wooden rail years ago when I'd tried to whittle my initials, chickened out at the J, and claimed it was an accident. It felt childish now, but also grounding a tiny secret brand marking, a past version of me who hadn't yet learned to label the flutter in his stomach whenever Mason's laughter rolled down the hallway. Back then it was just admiration, I'd insisted. Hero worship. Normal. Safe. Outside, Connor's sneakers thumped across the deck. He shouted something about forgetting firewood and dashed off to the shed. Silence settled again, except for the ceiling fan ticking overhead, blades nudging idle dust motes through amber light. I traced the quilt's faded star pattern and wondered if Mason even remembered that last visit, how he'd offered me the last slice of pecan pie, how our fingers brushed on the aluminum pan, heat pulsing from my cheeks to my ears so fiercely. I pretended to cough. Probably nothing to him, everything to me. A car engine rumbled, gravel crunching in slow approach. My heart answered like a reflex. I peered through the lace curtain as Mason stepped out of his truck, sun catching the fine hairs on his arms, a six-pack balanced against his hip and a grocery bag dangling from his wrist. He paused to breathe in the lake air, eyes half closed, and in that unguarded moment he looked unburdened, as though the city's weight stayed firmly behind the horizon. I wanted to bottle that sight proof that he wasn't some impossible daydream but a real man who could stand 30 feet from me on a Friday evening and smile at the smell of pine. I ducked back before he could glance up, chest tight with anticipation. I hadn't planned to confess anything this weekend. Secrets were easier folded into jokes and late-night stories. But the cabin walls seemed thinner than memory, and my own resolve felt softer, too. Maybe change doesn't arrive with fanfare, I thought, listening to Mason's boots clomp up the porch steps. Maybe it just climbs quietly into the places you've set aside as safe, like a brother's unexpected silhouette slipping through a half-lit doorway after midnight hand waits, to see whether you'll pretend sleep or finally turn to face it. Connor and I met in middle school detention, he for snapping rubber bands at the clock, me for drawing comic book panels across my math worksheet. We bonded over a shared love of pixel art and the mutual belief that cafeteria pizza tasted better cold. Since then, an entire decade of movie marathons, lost homework, and late-night group projects has stacked up between us like well-worn comic issues in the same box. Mason, meanwhile, drifted through my orbit like a myth. The older brother who graduated early, snagged a tech internship in the cities, and appeared at holidays long enough to rustle Connor's hair and ask me how many sketchbooks I'd filled that semester. He always made it sound like a legitimate accomplishment, and I always mumbled something self-deprecating while secretly glowing for days. Tonight, though, the three of us share the same pine-scented room, and nostalgia feels suddenly through. Connor rummages through cupboards for snacks, humming the Peckerman theme. I lean against the counter, watching Mason tilt a cooler to drain melted ice. Did you two finally beat that cop boss you were whining about at Christmas? Mason asks, flicking water from his fingertips. We weren't whining, I protest. We were formulating strategy. Formulating strategy, Connor parrots, in a faux professor voice. Translation. Jason screamed whenever the screen flashed red. I shove him with my elbow. He stumbles dramatically into a cabinet and cackles. Mason's laugh joins his a warmer, throatier sound that lands somewhere behind my sternum. Inside joke checkpoint. Every time Connor exaggerates my alleged panic, Mason will counter with, but he survived, as though I'm the protagonist of some saga only he's tracking. It started after I flubbed a cliff jump in college and scraped my knee. Mason had handed me a band-aid and intoned, "Our hero endures," to simple words, but they've become our microlanguage. While Connor sets up the console in the living room, Mason and I bring in firewood. Outside gulls wheel above the waterline, their calls echoing across the still lake. The dock rocks gently beneath our boots, and the entire world smells of cedar and moonrise. He hefts the last log onto the stack. "You still sketch?" "Every day," I say, then risk honesty. "Mostly people. Portraits." He wipes his palms on his jeans. "Faces I can't get out of my head." I meet his eyes for half a second too long, feel heat bloom in my throat, and shift my gaze to the water. Subtle. "Jason." "Very subtle." Small complication introduced. Back inside, Connor unrolls sleeping bags like a camp counselor. "There's only one spare. Ancient and plaid, apparently a mouse claimed the second last winter." The couch pulls out, but its metal bar is notorious. "I'll take the couch," Mason says, shrugging one broad shoulder beneath his flannel. "I'm smaller." I counter before thinking, then realize volunteering for discomfort might look suspiciously altruistic. Mason arches a brow. "Our hero endures. Remember, couch is mine." He squeezes my shoulder as he passes, fingers warm through my t-shirt fabric. The contact is casual, almost brotherly, but my pulse drums like it's keeping separate time. Later, we sprawl on the rug for Mario Kart. Connor crushes us both until midnight snacks call him to the kitchen, leaving Mason and me side by side beneath the TV's blue glow. I can hear the faint hiss of the lake through the screen door. Mason nudges my knee with his packet. "You still draw me as a comic villain." I grin at the old tease. Freshman year, I'd drafted a cartoon where Mason, caped in Wi-Fi symbols, stole the campus router. "Only when you deserve it." He flips his controller in his palm. "So often, pretty much." Our laughter fades into a comfortable hush. Through the low light, his profile looks softer than I remembered, the hard lines of confidence mellowed by road fatigue. He turns. Our eyes catch in that narrow space between dialogue and silence. I feel words pressing against the back of my tongue, compliments, confessions, anything, but only a thin breath escapes. "Jason," he says quietly, voice brushing my name like a fingertip. "Thanks for helping Connor pull this off." "It's nothing." My knee still tingles where his touched mine. He opens his mouth to add something, then Connor barrels back in, arms full of chips and soda. The moment evaporates, but its residue clings to me like static. Banters and chemistry. We play another round. Trash talk ricochets off wood paneling. Mason smirks whenever I elbow him. Connor accuses us of conspiratorial alliances. Mason leans close to whisper strategy, his lips inches from my ear. The simplest syllables send goosebumps down my arms when 2 a.m. arrives. Connor stumbles to the bunk beds. I unfold the plaid sleeping bag on the floor beside the pullout. Mason tugs at the bulky sofa frame, metal squeals, refusing to lock flat. "Guess the couch bar wins." He sighs. "Take the bag," I offer, heart hammering. "You'll freeze." I lift the stiff zipper and slide half the bag toward him. It's technically a double if we don't mind tight quarters. A joke, but my throat tightens. Mason studies me for a breath that feels miles long. Then he nods once. "Scoot over, hero." We lie down shoulder to shoulder, the plaid cocooning us in awkward proximity. The ceiling fan spins, stirring cool air, and each time the fabric rustles, I'm excruciatingly aware of how little space separates our hips. Our backs curve instinctively toward the shared warmth, and soon I can feel the slow, even rise and fall of his breathing. I stare at the shadowy rafters, cataloging every sensation: the flannel brush of his sleeve against my arm, the faint vanilla of his conditioner, the rhythmic flex of his fingers where they rest innocently maddeningly near mine. Sleep hovers just out of reach, as if waiting for permission. In the hush between seconds, Mason shifts, elbow grazing my ribs. "Comfortable," he murmurs. "Yeah," I whisper, voice unsteady. "A beat, me too." He doesn't move away. Neither do I. Through the cracked window a loon calls, lonely and low, as though narrating the delicate balance we've stumbled into. One fragile breath from ordinary / one heartbeat from something entirely new. Connor's alarm goes off at 7, but he silences it with one sleepy swat and keeps snoring. By 9 he's still dead to the world, face smashed into his pillow like a kid who overdosed on Mason and I shuffle into the kitchen for coffee, half laughing at how their mum used to joke that Connor could sleep through a marching band. Fuse must have tripped in the night, Mason says, flicking the overhead switch. Nothing. The fridge hums. The stove clock's blank. Only the living room lamp plugged into a different breaker glows in a lonely corner. I can grab the toolbox. I point toward the narrow stairwell off the mud. The fuse box is in the cellar. Stone walls, packed floor, half finished since the 70s. A place where spiders reign supreme. Mason smirks. A hero confronts the lair. I roll my eyes, but my pulse perks up at the thought of descending those creaky steps with him. If you start with the horror movie jokes, I'm leaving you down there. He winks. Lead on. Confined space, the cellar smells of cool earth and mothballs. A single dangling bulb illuminates a workbench, jars of rusty nails, and shelves, stacked with paint cans older than we are. The fuse box hangs on the far wall behind the hulking water heater. I tug the chain to brighten the bulb, but it flickers once, then dies. Darkness swallows us whole. Seriously, I mutter, hang on. Mason pulls out his phone. The blue flashlight cuts a narrow cone through floating dust. Should have changed that bulb last year. We squeeze between stacked lawn chairs and a sagging ping-pong table to reach the panel. Every hinge in this basement seems to groan, and every groan echoes. The air is colder than upstairs. Goosebumps race up my arms. Want me to hold the light? He asks. I nod, prying the metal door open. Our shoulders brush as we maneuver too cramped to avoid each other. The moment his elbow grazes my ribs, my breath quickens. Focus. Jason. Wires. Switches. .1 breakers. Flipped easy. I reset it. But when I push the door closed, the panel's hinges screech louder than expected. Something behind us clanks, maybe a paint can tipping, and Mason jerks backward, bumping the ping-pong table. The table skids. Its folded legs catch the doorframe. With a bang that rattles tools off hooks, the cellar door at the top of the stairs slams shut. We both freeze. Then a test yank from Mason's free hand. The knob refuses to turn. Tell me that isn't locked, I whisper. Connor must have propped it last night to keep critters out. Table must have nudged it closed. He twists harder, with thuds. Unmoved, great engineering. Upstairs, Connor's video game victory theme erupts, speakers blasting at a proudly obnoxious volume. No way he'll hear us pounding while I exhale. At least we fixed the power. Mason's laugh is low, a ripple of resigned amusement. Now we just need rescue. Tension in the dark, we settle on the floor against a cedar trunk full of winter blankets, the only soft surface available. His phone flashlight becomes our tiny campfire. We could call Connor, but Mason's signal dies underground, and mine's no better. I text anyway just in case, then tuck the phone away. Silence expands, tight and humming. I hug my knees. Mason stretches his long legs, boot toes nearly touching the opposite wall. Our shoulders share the same blanket fold. Every time he shifts, our arms brush, sending static up my skin. He studies the water stains on the ceiling joists. Remember that haunted house field trip in 8th grade? I snort. The one where Connor pretended to faint so we could ride the EMT cart to the exit. And you dropped your sketchpad in the vampire room. A masterpiece, lost to latex, fangs and strobe lights. Mason smiles soft, fond. I chased it down the hallway for you. I remember him barreling past the actors, emerging triumphant with my half-finished superhero doodle. My cheeks warm at the memory and at the way he's looking at me now, lamplight turning the brown of his eyes to smoky caramel. An impulse surges up. Tell him that page has been pressed in a binder for years because his fingerprints smudged the corner and I couldn't make myself erase them. Tell him every art assignment since has tried to bottle that moment, someone seeing something I made, and deciding it mattered. Instead, I swallow. The confession lodges behind my ribs. Inner struggle minutes drag. My brain rehearses dangers that don't exist. What if we never get out? What if this is the last conversation I get with him? Say something real, but fear twines with hope in a tug of war. One wrong word could tilt everything weird. 0 words guarantees nothing changes. Mason rubs his arms. Cold down here. We remember the blanket trunk simultaneously. I open the lid. The cedar smell bursts free, sharp and nostalgic. On top lies an old flannel comforter, big enough for two if we sit close. I drape it around his shoulders first, then mine. The edges overlap like shared armor. He shifts, so our thighs align, warmth radiating through denim. Thanks, hero. The nickname lands softer, this time almost intimate. My heart stutters, he continues, voice quieter. Always figured you'd end up drawing comics professionally. Too many cape cliches, I mumble. I like real faces. Real faces make lousy secret identities. I hide in plain sight. The words slip out before I can leash them. Mason turns, studying me. The flashlight sits on the floor now, glow angling upward, sculpting shadows along his jaw. His gaze flicks briefly to my mouth, or maybe I imagine it. Either way, heat pools in my stomach, sweet and tense. Jason, he starts, then hesitates, as if weighing something fragile between fingertips. Upstairs, a door slams. Connor, finally up. We both tense, but his footsteps veer toward the bathroom. The water pipes groan overhead, still trapped. Mason exhales, smile, tilting. When we get out, remind me to fix that latch. Deal. My voice sounds paper thin. I shift my knee. It bumps his. Neither of us moves away. Silence presses closer, heavy with unspoken currents. Casual touch. Unintentional intensity. Mason reaches behind me to adjust the blanket and his arm curves around my back, steady, protective. You're shivering. Cold basement, I say, though the chill isn't the culprit. His palm slides lightly over my shoulder as he settles in. Electricity zips down my spine at the simple contact. He doesn't withdraw quickly. Instead, his fingers linger, thumb brushing a rhythm just shy of deliberate. My thoughts scatter like leaves. He notices the small callus on my middle knuckle, ink build-up from gripping pencils. Occupational hazard. I nod. Price of heroics. His laugh is a warm puff of air near my ear. That close, I dare a glance. His mouth curved inches away, eyelashes casting crescent shadows. The blanket edge slips, and our chests almost touch before I catch it. Every nerve stands at attention. A picture leaning forward, closing that inch, letting the cedar-scented dark swallow the last of my restraint. But what if the basement door swings open at that exact moment? What if he recoils? The friendship, Connor's trust, the rhythm of holidays and game nights all could shatter. Fear not with desire. I'm suspended between them, heart drumming. Jason. Mason's voice is low, uncertain. He draws a breath as though readying for a leap. Thump. Footsteps on the stairs. Guys. You down there? Connor's voice, drowsy and annoyed. Mason's hand retracts casual speed, like nothing happened. The spell snaps. Reality floods in. Yeah, Mason calls back. Door stuck behind the table. A moment of scrambling above. Then the knob turns. Light spills down as Connor wrenches the door open, hair wild, pajama pants askew. Seriously? You to break everything without me? Relief and disappointment crash together inside my chest. I stand, legs shaky, and help Mason fold the comforter. Our eyes meet brief, charged. Then the three of us head upstairs, conversation already turning to breakfast. The basement fades behind us, but the space between my ribs still hums with all the things I didn't say and all the ways his fingertips said them for me. The afternoon drifted by in a haze of minor chores, board game trash talk, and Connor's heroic attempt to grill burgers that somehow tasted of charcoal and triumph. Nothing about the day felt ordinary, yet Mason and I spoke mostly in safe fragments, jokes about the basement fiasco, exaggerated groans over burnt meat, a passing mention of the playlist he built for the drive-up. Each exchange skimmed the surface like a skipped stone, never daring to sink. But when pink twilight bled into indigo, Connor sprawled across the living room sofa for a 10-minute power nap, controller loose in his hand. Within seconds he was snoring softly, one leg dangling like a broken antenna. Mason and I shared a look across the coffee table. Privacy had strutted in and kicked its feet up. Want to check out the dock? He asked, voice pitched low. I managed a nod that felt steadier than my pulse. We crept outside, the screen door clicking shut behind us. The sky was bruised purple, streaked with the last gold of sunset, and the lake lay glassy, reflecting everything and hiding nothing. Crickets tuned their violins in the reeds. Somewhere distant, an owl rehearsed a single note. Boards creaked under our weight as we walked the narrow dock, shoulders brushing in the lingering warmth. At the edge we sat, legs dangling over water like kids avoiding bedtime. Mason tossed a pebble. Ripples widened until starlight shattered across them. Remember the first time we came here? He asked. 14, I said. You tried to teach me to dive, and you belly flopped so hard, Connor screamed. Medic. Heat pricked my ears, but I laughed. Pretty sure you offered to pay my hospital bills. He smiled, soft, fond. I liked that you jumped anyway. Most people back off when it looks scary. His gaze flicked to mine, held an extra beat, then slid away. Silence whooshed in, thick as July humidity. I traced the worn grain of the dock plank, sudden courage fizzing beneath my ribs. Say it, say something, but words felt like fragile glass. One slip and they'd shatter between us. Mason drew a breath. About the basement, I keep thinking about it too, I blurted, then winced at my own eagerness. He exhaled, almost a laugh, almost a sigh. Yeah, same. Fingers drummed on his knee. Jason, are we tiptoeing around something that's been there a while? My throat tightened. Depends. How far back is a while? High school, at least. He gave a tiny shrug, eyes fixed on the dark water. I'd come home from college and you'd be at our kitchen table, sketching. I remember noticing more than I expected to notice. A nervous grin tugged at my mouth, like my impeccable shading, like the way you'd chew your lip when you concentrated. He glanced over quickly, as if afraid of scaring the admission away, and how the room felt brighter when you laughed. I chalked it up to nostalgia until nostalgia started losing its excuse. Air lodged in my chest. I forced it out. I kept finding reasons to visit Connor. Soft laugh. Pretty sure I invented at least 3 group project emergencies, so I could wander into your room and pretend I needed a charger. That explains the stash of spare phone cords you left behind. We both chuckled, tension rippling but not breaking. Another pebble plunked into the lake, sending fresh rings outward. He sobered first. Basement was intense. I almost said something, but then the cavalry arrived. I noticed, my voice wavered, equal parts humor and ache. I was one flashlight flicker away from babbling. A gentle breeze lifted the hair on my forehead. Mason reached over and smoothed it back before he seemed to realize his own boldness. His fingers stole against my temple, warm and light, then drew away to polite. Too fast. I don't want to guess, he said quietly, but I feel like we're standing on the same diving board again. I stared at his hand resting between us on the plancalist palm. Faint scar from some workshop mishap. My pulse marked time in my ears. Maybe we are. Then I'll jump first if you need me to. The kindness in those words cracked something open. My lungs filled with lake-scented air. I released it in a shaky rush. I like you, I admitted, almost whispering like stupid hard. Probably since that night you saved my drawing. I've tried to file it under brother's friend or unattainable crush, but it keeps leaking out. His breath hitched. He met my eyes fully, none of the half-smile deflection he'd worn all day. I kept telling myself it was a phase, that if I ignored it, it would fade. He swallowed. It didn't. A sharp, dizzy relief surged heady, as stepping off a cliff and finding wings. Yet fear clung stubbornly. What about Connor? I asked. This could make things messy. It could, he allowed, gaze now tracing the constellation of my freckles as though mapping terrain. But Connor loves us both. Mess never scared him. He thrives in it. I huffed a laugh. True, he'd probably orchestrate the wedding playlist before we finished confessing. The joke lightened us, but Mason's eyes stayed tender. Still, I don't want to hurt anyone, especially you. You won't, I said, and felt the certainty ring through me like campfire guitar strings, unless you walk away right now. He shifted closer, knees brushing mine. Not walking, but I'm also not rushing. I need you to know I'm in this for more than you know. Cabinwick and Sparks. Same. My heart thumped so loud I wondered if the fish below could hear. The dock creaked as he turned fully, crossing one leg beneath him. So where does that leave us? I swallowed. Standing on the edge, equal parts terrified and thrilled. Good summary. He inhaled slow, deliberate. Jason, can I? His voice broke. He tried again, softer. Can I kiss you? S. Throbbed in every fingertip, but words jammed in my throat. I managed a nod, tiny, fervent. He waited anyway. His eyes asked the question once more, seeking the unmistakable yes inside mine. Only when I whispered, please, did he lean in. The first brush of his lips was featherlight, so tentative it felt like a promise rather than a claim. My hands, almost of their own volition, found the edges of his flannel collar anchoring. He pulled back a breath to gauge me. I chased him, closing the gap with a sigh that tasted of relief. The second kiss lingered and hurried, exploratory, deepening as confidence bloomed. Warmth spread from the point of contact, unfurling through every nerve like sunrise across water. When we parted, foreheads resting together, the world seemed hushed in reverence. Even the crickets kept a respectful beat. Worth the wait, he murmured. I smiled so wide it ached. Hero endures. Mason laughed, breath stirring my lips. Retiring that nickname, maybe upgrading it. Heroes deserve happily ever afters. His thumb traced my cheekbone, gentle. Sure, we'll write one, slow and real. Lights flicked on in the cabin. Connor's silhouette filled the doorway, stretching and yawning. Mason and I instinctively separated an inch, just enough to look casual, but our hands stayed linked, fingertips, resting together on the dock as if glued by moonlight. Connor called out, "You two plan on skinny dipping, or should I heat leftovers?" Mason grinned, squeezing my hand once before standing. "Coming. And for the record, Jason promised not to cannonball." I snorted, rising beside him. Connor disappeared inside, muttering about lifeguard fees. We walked back over weathered boards, shoulders brushing once, twice every contact sparking quiet joy. At the porch steps, Mason paused, voice low. "This is the beginning, okay? Not just a weekend thing, okay?" I echoed, feeling the words settle into my bones like something permanent. Inside, we found Connor rummaging in the fridge. He glanced at our joined hands, eyebrows arching. A grin blossomed. "About time," he declared, tossing us each a soda. I was starting a betting pool with myself. Heat flooded my face, but embarrassment melted into laughter. Mason nudged me, eyes dancing. I nudged back, soda cans clinking like a toast. Later, while Connor cued a movie and Mason draped a blanket over the three of us, I marveled at how easily the world had tipped. Same cabin, same worn couch, but my shoulder now rested against Mason's chest. His arm looped behind me like it belonged there. I breathed in cedar and soft detergent, felt his heartbeat steady under my cheek, and understood something simple and immense. Change doesn't always roar in. Sometimes it slides beside you on a weathered dock, asks permission, and waits until you're brave enough to say yes. Outside, stars painted new stories across the sky. Inside, Mason's thumb traced lazy circles on my arm, promising chapters, yet unwritten, and for the first time in years. Every blank page ahead felt like a place where our names could meet inked side by side, daring the world to turn. Asterisk. Connor's old projector whirs, throwing soft light across the cabin's pine-paneled wall. Some 1980s adventure flick rolls in the background, but Mason and I barely register the cheesy dialogue. We're camped on the floor against the couch corners. Suggestions so he could sprawl like a starfish above us, yet our knees end up tangled anyway. My shoulder fits naturally beneath Mason's arm, his thumb drifting lazy semicircles on my upper arm as if he's sketching calm directly onto my skin. For 10 beautiful minutes we say almost nothing, letting the confessions settle the way warm syrup sinks into pancakes. Each breath feels lighter, like someone unscrewed an invisible jar around my ribs. When Connor laughs too hard at a dated special effect, Mason and I exchange a look that says a private theater's worth. Yes, this is real, and yes, it still feels absurdly good. "Can I admit something?" Mason murmurs near my ear. "Only if it's embarrassing," I whisper back. Our voices stay low, conspiratorial, close enough that his lips graze my hair. He chuckles. "Pretty embarrassing." "Yeah." I've replayed that doc moment in my head since high school. Same scene, same lake, glitter. Except Tinu always dove in afterward to celebrate. Tinu couldn't dive without a first aid kit on standby. He taps my knee. "Artistic license." Connor leans over the couch, eyebrow raised. "Am I missing the director's commentary down there?" "Bonus features," Mason replies, not missing a beat. "Restricted content. Sorry, bud." Connor groans theatrically, but his grin is pure satisfaction. He flops back, remote balanced on his chest, and pretends to ignore us. In truth, he's giving us space, the world's most obvious wingman. A slow scene on screen cues Mason to shift, drawing the blanket higher over our shoulders, our fingers already linked, interlaced tighter. A pulse of joy leaps up my spine, teeny but electric. "So," I say, voice soft, "we've cleared the big hurdle. Now comes the DLC real life. Level 2, Mason agrees, turning so our foreheads nearly touch. "Think we can cope it?" "Depends. Are you cool dating a guy who inhales cereal for dinner and sometimes forgets to answer texts for 3 days while he's drawing?" He snorts. "Are you cool dating a guy who schedules morning runs at sunrise and has an allergy to movie spoilers?" "Guess. We'll both survive." I let the playful smile ebb, replaced by something earnest. "Logistics, though your apartment's 2 hours away. My dorm's underwater in finals." His brow furrows brief tension, but he exhales through it. "Summer intern schedule's flexible. I could work remote 3 days a week, maybe bump that to 4 if I sweet talk my supervisor, and I can train hop or hitch rides with Connor." When he visits above us, Connor's hand appears over the couch edge, giving a silent thumbs up before disappearing again. We laugh, tension dissolving. "What about telling people?" I add. "Your parents, mine, campus friends." Mason's thumb pauses its idle tracing. "One step at a time. We're ready. I think they'll catch up. But let's own it on our terms." He nudges me gently. "Our story, our pace." Hearing him say our story sparks a glow somewhere deep. the kind you feel in the soles of your feet. I nod. Storyboard the rollout, spoken like a true artist. Speaking of, I add, retrieving my sketchpad from the coffee table. I flip to a blank page and, on impulse, draw 2 rough stick figures perched on the end of a dokwan holding a flashlight like a torch. Mason watches, amused. That one's you, I say, pointing to the taller stick figure with messy scribbles of hair. 14-year-old Jason never stopped drawing his unlikely heroes. He eyes me fondly, reaches for the pencil, and adds a second light this one over the smaller figure's head. Heroes are overrated, he murmurs. I prefer co-pilots. The simplicity of that line nearly knocks me over. Without thinking, I lean in and kiss the corner of his mouth. Barely a brush, really, but it sparks like a struck match. The kind of kiss that exists just to say, yes, I heard you, and yes, me too. Connor's voice explodes above. Okay, PDA meter at 60%. Time for popcorn refills. He scoops the empty bowl, winks, and saunters to the kitchen, humming triumphantly off-key. Mason twirls the pencil once, then tucks it behind my ear. Tomorrow, he says, let's take the kayak out. Just us, a thermos of coffee, and maybe that sketchpad deal. But you're paddling on the way back, he grins. Figures the artist gets chauffeur service. We fall into companionable silence, listening to cabinet doors clack and popcorn kernels burst. I rest my head against his shoulder. He presses a light kiss to the crown of my hair. The movie's soundtrack swells with predictable triumph, yet somehow it underscores our own quieter victory. In this small cabin, half lit by adventure cliches, half by the real glow of new understanding, we're no longer circling possibility. We're standing in it, together, ready for morning currents and long highway drives and awkward family dinners. They'll come with all their mess and magic. For now, it's enough that his eyes meet mine and promise, again and again, that none of it will scare him away. Connor bumbles back with a full bowl, mock groaning about third-wheel tax. Mason and I scoot apart just enough to make room for him, but not enough to break the sleepy chain of our joined feet under the blanket. We settle into the next scene, laughter and crumbs and shoulders bumping an easy rhythm. In the flicker of the projector, Mason's hand gives mine the lightest squeeze, like punctuation at the end of a sentence neither of us ever wants to finish. Morning unfurls like a fresh canvas, pale gold bleeding into pastel blue when Mason nudges my shoulder. Rise and shine, co-pilot. His hush is reverent, as if we're sneaking into a museum before opening hours. Connor is still dead asleep, head buried beneath a pillow fort. We slip onto the deck, 2 mugs of coffee steaming in our hands, and ease the tandem kayak into the glass-still lake. The water is so clear I can see our twin reflections stretching long beneath the hull, skimming alongside like silent traveling companions. Mason takes the stern seat first. I perch at the bow with the thermos wedged between my feet and my sketchpad, balanced on my knee. For a while we paddle in easy rhythm, oars cutting neat chevrons through liquid mirror. Each stroke feels like punctuation to last night's promise, slow and real. Think Connor's snores will echo across state lines if we leave him, Mason teases. Worse, he'll blame us for letting him oversleep. Mason chuckles, the sound curling over the lake like wood smoke. Then quiet descends, soft but weighty. I flip my sketchpad open and rough in the shoreline, the cedar silhouettes, the lone loon coasting nearby, the dark sweep of Mason's hair in the early light. His reflection ghost shimmers at the paper's edge. I pencil it in too, unsure where water ends and memory begins. He rests his paddle across his lap, watching that me, work in progress. I grin without looking up. Hold still or you'll end up with 3 eyes. He obeys, immediately tilting into a goofy mannequin pose. I laugh, boat wobbling just enough to slosh water against the bow. He rescues the thermos, eyes sparkling. High-stakes art session, he whispers when I'm finished. I tear the sheet free, fold it once, and slide it into the breast pocket of his flannel, right over his heartbeat. Souvenir, I say. His eyes soften. In return, he digs into the small dry bag at his feet and hands me a stainless steel keyring, simple, worn, threaded through a thumb-sized wooden tag burned with the outline of a kayak. Found it at a roadside craft stand yesterday, he says. Figured I'd wait, but, he shrugs. Maybe carrying the spare key to my place won't feel so hypothetical anymore. A thrum of warmth fills my chest, blooming outward until even my fingertips tingle. I attach the ring to the zipper pull of my sketchpad, visible, undeniable. I'll try not to swipe too many of your hoodies. I have a budget line for hoodie attrition. He splashes a playful dribble over my sandal, and I retaliate with a flick from my paddle tip. Water diamonds scatter in the sun, catching prisms before falling. We float a moment in complicit silence, lake cradling us like a breath held between sentences. From somewhere over the trees, a couple of swallows dart and loop, carving invisible ribbons in the sky. Everything feels improbably balanced, future and present, promise and proof. Mason clears his throat, suddenly shy. I know real life's gonna crowd in work deadlines, your finals, distance. We'll mess up scheduling and maybe argue on the phone about who's driving which weekend. We'll figure it out. I swirl my paddle, watching concentric rings widen, intersect, then steady out. Long as we stay in the same boat. The pun earns a groan, but his smile turns brighter. He leans forward, hand reaching past the coffee mug to rest over mine where it grips the gunwale a touch, neither urgent nor timid, just sure. Morning breeze feather lifts my hair, but his palm keeps me anchored. I've got your back, hero, he says. And I've finally got my co-pilot. I squeeze once, then set my free hand atop his. Layering commitment, like shingles. We glide till the sun lifts fully, painting gilded paths across the water. Eventually the cabin comes into view, smoke curling from the chimney. Connor standing on the dock in his comic strip pajamas, waving a spatula like a distress flag. Pancake emergency, he hollers. Guest breakfast, duty calls, Mason says. But neither of us hurries. The distance narrows slowly, deliberately, as if the lake itself wants to elongate this fragile, golden in-between. When we beach the kayak, Connor eyes the new keyring jangling on my sketchpad and raises his brows. Merch, already. You two. Work fast. Mason claps his shoulder. Beta launch. Expect limited edition t-shirts by fall. Connor rolls his eyes but grins so wide it nearly splits his face. Just make sure you print one in my size. Inside, we fall into the familiar chaos of departure, day folding blankets, stuffing duffels, debating who hid the phone chargers, spoiler, Connor. Yet every mundane motion feels retuned when Mason brushes past me in the hallway. Our hands meet briefly, thumb gliding against knuckle. When I pass him the car keys, he hooks his pinky around mine for an instant longer than needed. Miniature vows, warm and steady, car packed, we linger at the porch steps. The engine idles. Wind stirs the treetops like applause. Mason steps aside from Connor's goodbye bear hug and turns to me. No grand gesture, new Holovigi finale, just a soft exhale and the quiet slide of his fingers along my jaw before he kisses me. Unrushed, certain. Morning sunlight pools around us, bright as stage lights, but feels private all the same. I'll text when I hit the freeway, he murmurs. I'll text when I finish my first final. I tap the wooden tag on the keyring, and if you ever doubt my hoodie-stealing intentions, he laughs. Doors open. One last squeeze of hands, then he climbs into the truck. Gravel crunches, taillights wink, and just before the curve swallows him, his arm lifts in the window, waving a promise larger than words. Beside me, Connor angles a sidelong look. So, movie night Monday's still a thing? Absolutely, I say. Mason already called dibs on the sequel. Connor smirks. Guess I'll buy extra popcorn. I pocket the keyring, its cool weight settling against my palm. In my other hand, I hold the kayak sketch creased from his pocket, edges damp from lake mist. I smooth it across my thigh, imagining future sketches layered atop city sidewalks, dorm rooftops, road trip diners at midnight. Panels and a comic will color together, one sunrise at a time. With that thought glowing like a panel's final splash page, I shoulder my bag and follow Connor down the path, heart steady, stride light, the next chapter already tugging at the seam of the day.